Thank you so much for that. Thank you to Michael Schreiber and also everyone here at the club. It's really an honor being part of this panel with people I look up to and I rely on for my advocacy and the work I do with the LGBT community, especially the asylee and asylum seeker community from Russia and from all around the world. I want to ask everyone just to clear your mind for a minute and just imagine living every day in fear, living every day afraid to go out of your house, living every day afraid to go online, living every day afraid to do the normal things we take for granted. Also, I want you to imagine leaving your family or losing your family, even worse. Imagine fleeing that situation and coming to a new country with a new language, a new culture, new laws, without any support or guidance, and with perhaps just a few dollars in your pocket. Just imagine giving up everything in your life so you didn't have to live, so you wouldn't have to live in that fear. That situation really influenced me to become more involved in this issue. So I'd say a few years ago, my pastor, Reverend Pat Baumgartner of Metropolitan Community Church, asked me for help. She knew I was an immigration lawyer, and she asked me for help. Some people were coming through the church looking for help. They were asylum seekers. They were here. Really, they didn't know what to do. And so Reverend Pat asked me to help represent these individuals. And as time went on, I realized that the situation required more than I could give. It required a lot more than just legal assistance. And I think that's true of everyone coming to this country for the first time, but especially for LGBT people and LGBT asylum seekers. When you think about it, most immigrants who come here, or at least that I know about, have support networks. They have family networks, they have friends, they have people from their hometown or home village that can help them settle here, and can help them really thrive here and survive. But a lot of LGBT immigrants don't have that. And when you compound that issue with the language issue, you know, everything's in English, people come here with varying degrees of knowledge of English. People come to a totally new legal system, totally new system as far as housing and doing the basic things in life. I was finding that all of those issues were coming to me as a lawyer and were a lot more than I could handle individually. So I suggested to Reverend Pat that we start this program called the Asylum Seeker Assistance Program to really look at the issue from more than just a legal perspective. So there are models out there that basically just look at this from a legal perspective, but I really found that the people who come here seeking asylum really needed to have multiple issues looked at and really need to work with us on multiple issues. So that's basically the model of ASAP, which is to provide asylum seekers with assistance in the legal realm, provide them with health assistance, especially mental health assistance and therapy, provide also spiritual or pastoral care. That's very, very important, and I'm going to get back to that. And also provide them with a peer mentor. So basically it's about assembling a team of people who can help share the responsibility, including the asylee or asylum seeker, him or herself, to get them settled and to basically win. I mean, my main concern is winning their legal case, but it's really about helping them come here and realize their full potential. And what I've found is the people who have gone through the program so far have really become heroes to me in the sense that they have turned around and have given so much back, not only to this country, but a lot of them have turned back to a very painful situation and they're helping the people within Russia, within Jamaica, within Pakistan, and helping them either get out of the country or somehow advance human rights in their country of origin. So it's very inspiring to be part of that work, but again, it takes more than just legal assistance. It takes assistance in all of these areas. And I think, from my observation, the Russian population that does come here does have a few special concerns. One of them is they come from Russia, where for multiple reasons historically, but also because obviously they're LGBTQ, it's very difficult to approach the government. So what I found is a lot of people come here needing to desperately get out of a bad situation and not necessarily knowing what to do next, not necessarily being very excited about approaching any sort of government given their own situation was so bad. So I think that's one obstacle that I've really found and I'm still working on, reaching out to the Russian-speaking community here in the US and making sure they know there is something called asylum available, and you should definitely avail yourself of it before it's too late, because unfortunately there's a one-year deadline that was imposed actually under the Clinton administration. So applying for asylum is really, really critical within that one-year deadline. So an additional issue is finding within New York, believe it or not, finding LGBTQ-friendly social services from providers that speak Russian. That's been a challenge for me, and maybe someone can provide some ideas either on the panel or in the audience for that. I found a lot of challenges with that, and already Yelena has helped me out with one particular situation. Another thing I found, just getting back to the spiritual element. So what's happening in Russia is very much aided by the worst elements of the Russian Orthodox Church, allying themselves with neo-fascist elements, with the Putin regime. But you really can't escape the fact that it does have a really strong element of spiritual violence. And so how important it is, even for people who don't necessarily identify as religious, how important it is to address that issue and to reassure people that God is not against them, all religious people are not against them. That's been really, really critical to, I think, helping people heal spiritually and emotionally from the trauma they've been through. So that's basically it in a very brief nutshell. I wanted to address some recent developments in asylum. So basically there's this wonderful thing called asylum that's out there, and but it is a long process, unfortunately, and it is a very challenging process, and it's hard for anybody, not even to mention people who have been through trauma, it's hard for anybody to go through this process or deal with immigration in any capacity. But I just wanted to deal with some recent developments in asylum and really stress the importance of connecting people, because I'm a lawyer and that's what I focus on, connecting people with good attorneys and not having people do things on their own, and getting people as soon as they come to this country as possible, get them connected with an experienced attorney in both immigration and sensitive, if not LGBTQ identified, at least sensitive in those issues as well. Another thing, talking about sensitivity to LGBTQ issues, my observation has been, at least in the past few years, New York has improved significantly as far as handling LGBTQ claims, especially from Russia. I remember a few years ago having some problems, unfortunately, with homophobic asylum officers. I think that problem's been largely handled, at least in New York, due to the advocacy of a lot of people in this room. But definitely, I encourage people to file their cases in New York, if not New York, California. That's also very important. People don't realize when they come here that the situation is very different in other parts of the country, and you do need to file probably in New York or California or another progressive place. The officers are drawn from the local population, so they do carry the prejudices, I guess, in with them, unfortunately, to asylum interviews from wherever they're from. And then one thing that's pretty terrible, which is there's been a huge delay in asylum cases being heard. There's a huge backup. Information has leaked out about why this is happening, but basically I think the asylum offices for a while stopped hearing cases, and so there's a big backlog. And so what's going to happen is that, unfortunately, a lot of people who apply are going to have to wait a very long time. So at this point, I think people are trying to address that within the immigration community, but that's really what's been happening. And I think they're starting to move that logjam a little bit, but unfortunately, people have been delayed. I'm working with over a year, but I know people have been delayed a lot longer than that. But that really needs pressure. Definitely our government needs pressure to know that this is unacceptable. They are supposed to be hearing cases within a short amount of time, 40 some days from filing of a case. They don't. They stretch it out. And so that's another added stressor to what asylum seekers are going through. But I would just want to let people know about that. And just looking to the future, some last points I want to make about the future. We definitely, as a city, and I'm so glad the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs is here, and they have been working really hard on helping immigrants integrate into the community, but a lot more needs to be done, especially providing social services. Housing is a huge issue. It's a huge issue, and I think some people are going to be addressing that. Medical care, obviously. We're talking about people who don't necessarily have the right to work here, at least for the first 6 months. So that period is very, very critical, getting people who can't work, the housing and the basics that they need. There's a coalition now in New York working on this issue called Better Together, and I just wanted to recognize them. So there are people working on this, but a lot more needs to be done. And just one last thing. The burden is on, unfortunately, asylum seekers to make their way here, to get out of those situations, to get visas from the U.S. Embassy, to deal with family or children they have back home. The burden should not be on asylum seekers to overcome these horrible situations. The burden should be on the U.S. government to get these people out of those situations, like it does with other refugees. Right now, the U.S. government does not have a refugee policy, and that's something I've been working on, and hopefully a lot more people will take up that cause, but right now the U.S. does not support people in other countries who need to get here who are LGBTQ. They rely on those people to come here, and that's not the way it should be. So, a lot of good stuff happening, but still a lot of work that needs to be done. Thank you.